Hey guys, it's Sam and this is my November wrap-up. So I didn't end up doing quite as well as I did last month because last month I read 17 books, but this month I listened to 1 audiobook, read 1 graphic novel, and read 9 full-size novels for a total of 11 books this month. First was the audiobook. I listened to Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Sloan. It is about a guy who just got laid off recently from a company where he was doing a lot of the technical stuff. He was like running the website and running the Twitter feed and stuff like that, and he ends up getting a job at a 24-hour bookstore. But things are a little weird in this bookstore. The front is normal books and it's a very limited selection, but the back has these weird books. Weird customers come in for them that are on a list, and really weird things are kind of happening with this, and it's kind of a mystery within this book. So that's kind of what the whole book is about, and about this guy kind of figuring out everything about the bookstore and what's kind of going on in the bookstore and all these kinds of weird things that are happening within the bookstore. It is an adult novel, but it's really good for people who are trying to transition from YA into more adult books. This audiobook really fun. I really loved the narrator. The guy that narrated this did such good jobs with the voices and it just made everything really believable. Even the girls' voices he did really well. I a lot of times have problems with narrators that are doing male and female voices because a lot of audiobooks now have different narrators for both voices, and he did a really good job of both. A lot of things in this book really appealed to me personally. There was a lot of tech jargon in there about like computer coding and stuff like that, which I'm not personally into, but I found really enjoyable to listen to because I could kind of zone out with that, where if I was reading it I probably couldn't have as well and it might have bugged me a little more, but it didn't really bother me. There's a lot of RPG game aspects to it, which was really cool because he is a gamer, so that was really fun. So there was a lot of talk of that. There was a lot of talk about fantasy novels and different things and just some of the elements of fantasy novels, and it's really a book for fans of books. There's a lot of just book references and there's things that it's hard to explain because there's not like outright book references to other books, but there are just things that you as a book lover will enjoy, especially if you enjoy fantasy or any kind of RPG, tabletop gaming, that kind of thing. And if you're just a modern person who takes place in the modern world where technology is, there's a lot of like tech references, Google, stuff like that. So I really enjoyed this book and I had a lot of fun listening to it, so I ended up giving this audiobook 5 out of 5 stars. The first book that I ended up picking up to read was After You'd Gone by Maggie O'Farrell. This is an adult contemporary story and it's kind of hard to explain because it's written in a way that the timeline is disjointed. It's written in a bunch of different perspectives, and those perspectives aren't really labeled, and those perspectives jump sometimes from paragraph to paragraph without any warning, and the timeline jumps around. So that's kind of hard to explain because basically at the very beginning of the story, the main character wakes up, you kind of get the impression that she's depressed, she goes to visit her family in another city, she sees something horrific to her, she gets back on a train to go home immediately about 15 minutes after seeing her family, and then supposedly steps out in front of a car and gets hit by a car and goes into a coma. So she's kind of experiencing all of this, these timeline things, out-of-body experience type things from this coma, but it's really not written from her perspective. It's kind of written from everyone's perspective that is involved in the story. Any character, you can kind of jump into their perspective and it jumps into different timelines, and it's just kind of crazy because it jumps into 3 different generations of people. So it's her grandma, and then her mom, and then her, and then her when she was younger, and it just kind of jumps all over the place. So basically what I'm saying about this is I had a really hard time reading this book. I found it very slow, and it was just hard to follow. Like, I'm okay with the timelines jumping around. Obviously, I enjoy time travel books, but usually when timelines jump around like that, they're labeled, the perspective is labeled, it's very easy to see what the character is seeing or what you're experiencing as the reader, and with this story, I didn't have that. And then also the twist that ended up happening at the end when you find out kind of what she saw that day and what caused her to stop in front of a truck and that kind of thing, it just didn't really live up to the expectation. It just kind of was like, that's it. So I ended up giving this only 3 stars. I kind of enjoyed it when I was reading it, but it really didn't blow me away. Just normal adult contemporary story. After struggling with that book, I ended up picking up 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray as soon as it came in the mail because I had pre-ordered it. This was one of my most anticipated releases for the fall. It is a YA sci-fi alternate universe jumping book, and it's about this girl Marguerite, and she is the daughter of a pair of scientists who have figured out a way to jump between universes. I've actually already done a full review on this, so I will link that here because I'm not going to go much into it, but it's a very interesting premise. I really had a lot of fun with it. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the books because, again, as you guys know, first books in a series tend to be a little rough for me. I don't think that the characters are as fleshed out as they could be, so I tend to enjoy the later books in the series, just generally speaking, so I'm really looking forward to those. I really enjoyed the universes that you did get to see in this, and all of that. I'm really looking forward to the rest of them and how the story kind of progresses. So I end up giving this 4 stars. Go ahead and check out my review for more information. I then continued to read the Y the Last Man series, so I got onto volume 3. Y the Last Man, for those of you that don't know, is written by Brian K. Vaughan. He is the same guy that wrote Saga, which is my favorite graphic novel series currently. And Y the Last Man is about a guy named Yorick and his pet monkey Ampersand, who are the 2 last remaining males of any species left on the Earth, because at the very beginning of the first book, all of them end up wiped out by this like mysterious plague. No one knows why. They're all dead. And so now it's just him kind of figuring out what happened, and there's all these different characters, all these different storylines kind of interacting. So I really can't say much about it because this is the 3rd volume, but I'm still really enjoying it, and I still give the series overall 4 stars so far. I then ended up marathoning the Ruby Red trilogy, which is Ruby Red, Sapphire Blue, and Emerald Green by Kerstin Gier. So let me first start with Ruby Red. I ended up doing a buddy read with Louisina from My Reading Glasses. I will link her channel down below. Her and I wanted to start this series, so we decided to read this book together. Ruby Red is about a girl who comes from a family of time travelers. The entire family cannot time travel, but she is in the bloodline. So not every generation has a time traveler, but the bloodline carries like the time travel gene basically. So she's in this family, and her cousin has been trained her entire life to be the next time traveler. They're around the same age. And of course, it ends up being our main character, and she doesn't know what to do, and it's kind of crazy. This book was a lot of fun because the Time Traveler Society that kind of helps the time travelers, and there's lots of things I don't want to spoil, but basically there's like this group of people that are all part of the time traveling kind of like society. They're kind of like Freemasons, for lack of a better like analogy, and there's a lot of mystery surrounding them. So this book, when she first jumps into it, you're kind of jumping into it with her, and it's very interesting, very fast paced, and I got through this one very quickly. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I then picked up Sapphire Blue, which is the 2nd book in this series, because the first book I felt had so much potential, and I was really excited to get into this one. So this one I struggled with a little bit more. Like I said, the first one has a lot of potential, but this one just kind of started to drag. I will say this, that the chapters in these books are very long. They're like 30 to 35 pages long, which I just feel makes the books drag more, because I like to read in chapter segments, and I just couldn't finish a chapter very quickly because of how long they were. So this kind of continued the mystery and everything that was going on within that, like I said, time travel society that there is. And there was another side character that was introduced in this who was like my favorite character in the whole series. Hysterical character. So that was a lot of fun, and I still really enjoyed this book, just not as much as the first one. And I really wanted to get to the last one to kind of figure out everything and to have everything wrapped up. So I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. So then I picked up Emerald Green, the last book in this series, and overall, kind of struggled with it. I just felt like this entire book was a letdown. I'm actually going to be doing a series review on this, as well as a gripe, which is the opposite of a gush. I've always done gush videos because I always do videos about books that I really enjoyed, but I kind of have to complain about this, and it's not a rant, it's just a gripe. So this book, like I said, it's the longest one in the series, and it just kind of dragged, and I felt like the books could have been a lot shorter, and the series could have been shorter all in all, and a lot of things don't get wrapped up basically at all, and I will talk about that more in my review and my gripe if you have read the series and you want to get all the discussion-y type stuff in it. But it's just kind of a letdown. The first book had a ton of potential, and this was just not what I was expecting. Also, all of the books do have an insta-love element to it. These books take place over a total of like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. So the fact that there was like insta-love in it, and these characters are like in love at it. So yeah, I obviously didn't have a very good time with this series overall, and I ended up giving this book 3 stars. Overall, I would say that this series is about a 3-star series. I then picked up Falling Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes, and I'm actually doing a read-along for this, as well as a live show that will be taking place on Friday, the 5th of December, here on my channel at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will link the video for that down below. I'm doing this read-along with the help of Louisina from My Reading Glasses, who I mentioned earlier, and Marina from A Makeshift Library. I will link their channels down below, as I said, and I will link the information video for the read-along for this book. And we're also doing the sequel books as well as in a read-along. So we're going to be starting to read Rebel Spring right after the live show on Friday, and then we'll be reading Gathering Darkness after the live show for Rebel Spring. Again, information down below. But this is a YA fantasy series, and I'm going to describe it best as like Game of Thrones light. Honestly, like, it's Game of Thrones in YA. It's not the same story, but it's very similar. You have multiple perspectives that you're following. There are multiple different countries that you're following, and it's so good. I had a ton of fun with this book. there are so many twists that if you follow me on Twitter, I was tweeting about like, oh my god. Like, there are so many twists that you just don't see coming, and you think things are going to be drawn a little more, and then a twist happens, you're just like, what? So I really enjoyed this book, but I will talk about that more during the live show, so if you have read this book, or you are reading this book, or you're going to read this book before the 5th, or anything, come and hang out with us during the live show, and you will get all my thoughts on that, but I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I then wanted to finish out the Goddess Test series, which is by Aimee Carter. So I ended up picking up Goddess Interrupted and The Goddess Inheritance by Aimee Carter. The Goddess Test is about a girl, Kate, whose mother is dying, and her last dying wish is to go back to her hometown so that Kate can kind of experience it. Crazy things kind of start happening, and Kate runs into this guy who basically says that he is Hades. His name is Henry, but he says that he is Hades, and that she can take this test to become the goddess of the underworld, so the new Persephone, and can kind of save her mother, etc., etc. So, I've said this before, if you guys have been around, you know, I love Hades Persephone, I love Hades, I love Greek retellings, I love everything about it. So I loved the first book, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, I think they're so fun, and I loved it. So I really wanted to get to the next books. So I picked up Goddess Interrupted. This is the second book in the series, and I can't say much about it, obviously, because it's the second book in the series, but I really did enjoy it. I love these books. I cannot put them down. I love the retelling and the reimagining of the Greek myth. The way that the underworld and different aspects of Greek mythology are explained in these books is super cool to me, and I just love them. They're really short, and they're really easy to fly through. I did have more problems with some of the things in this story, and I'm actually going to do a full series review and Gush/Gripe on this series. So if you want to check that out, I will link that here when it is posted. I'm going to do it later this month. But I still enjoy this story a ton, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I then ended up picking up The Goddess Inheritance by Aimee Carter. This is the 3rd book in this series. Again, I read these in a day. I read all 3 books in 1 day each. I love them. I stay up late to finish them. They're great. They're fast-paced, blah, 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 blah. But again, the story kind of went downhill even farther than the second one, so I only ended up giving it 3 stars. Again, you can check out all of my thoughts on that in my review and my discussion videos, but I really still recommend this series. I really do love the first book. If you just want to read the first book, which like I said was 5 out of 5 stars, I really recommend doing so. It was a ton of fun. It just didn't live up to my expectations. And the last book that I read this month was The Winter's Curse by Marie Rutkowski. This book was so good. I really wasn't expecting as much out of this book as people were hyping it for. This book has started getting a little more hype on Twitter and stuff because the second book is coming out this March. But oh my goodness, this book was so good. So I don't really know anything about this book. I want to say it's a YA fantasy, but it's really not. There are no magical, fantastical elements in it, so it's kind of like it's a historical fiction, but it doesn't take place in our world, it takes place somewhere else. So take that for what you want to take it as. Like, it doesn't really make a ton of sense in my head either. So the setting itself is kind of hard to explain, but if you are a fan of fantasy, you'll be a fan of this, so don't worry about that part. But basically it takes place in a world where 10 years ago, one race/country took over the other one, and those people are now slaves, and this country is living there and just kind of wreaking havoc and everything else. So it follows our main character, Kestrel, which is the coolest name I have ever heard. I just love it. I know it's a hawk. I just think it's really awesome. And as soon as I read the first sentence about Kestrel, she was gambling, and I was like, I love you, you are amazing, and it just, yeah. I was sold on this book after like the first 10 pages, basically. So Kestrel is the daughter of one of the generals for the conquering nation, and so she's kind of like a higher up aristocratic character in this story, but she just really doesn't fit in with that. She doesn't want to be a warrior or a soldier, which is what her entire society is kind of built around. Like, all the aristocrats become soldiers, and she was walking through a market one day with one of her friends, and there was a slave auction, and she ends up buying this slave, and she doesn't really know why. She doesn't really enjoy slavery, she thinks it's wrong, and she ends up just buying the slave kind of on a whim. She doesn't really know why. And things kind of escalate from there. But there's so many things going on with this story. I'm actually going to do a full review and gush on this, which I will link here when it is up. But there's so many different fascinating elements to this story. First off, Kestrel is one of my top favorite female characters, and you know I have a really good list of those if you've been around for a while, but I absolutely adore her because her strength comes from her wit. She is not, like I said, like a warrior or soldier. She's not like a strong physically character, but she is so smart and so conniving and so perceptive, and she's amazing. And then the fact that the conquering nation was actually the barbaric nation, the barbaric fighter nation, and they conquered a nation that was like more civilized, into arts, that kind of thing, which is a very interesting dynamic because in history we kind of have, you know, the people that were conquered as like barbarians and etc. And this book kind of twists that on its head, and it's a very interesting dynamic to see. And just the way that everything is kind of woven together in the story. There weren't necessarily like plot twists like I would typically think of them, but there were. It was just, I wasn't really expecting them, and they flowed naturally, and they didn't feel cheap at all. Like sometimes you have a plot twist where you're just like, you're just throwing that in there to throw me off. And this was just, everything made sense, but I didn't really see it coming. And I can't talk too much about it because I'm still kind of forming my thoughts about it. So if you want to hear more about it, I will have my review and everything posted when it is up. But I really love this story. It was so original and different, and I've already pre-ordered the second book in the series. So I'm just letting you guys know that I'm really, really in love with this book. If you've kind of been like, not sure about this, definitely pick it up because it far surpassed any of my expectations. Alright guys, that is it for my wrap-up. Comment down below and let me know if you have read any of these books and if you enjoyed them, and also what you read this month that you enjoyed. Also, update, I have 7 books left on my TBR for the end of the year. I will link my end of the year TBR down below for you guys to go check out if you haven't seen that, but I kind of put like, these are the books I want to get done by the end of the year. Some of them, there's other books I'm going to read besides that, obviously, but I have 7 left, so I think I'm going to make it. And I think I'm going to get all the books read I want to by the end of the year, so that's really exciting. So comment down below and let me know if you guys are all on par for your goals, because we have 1 month left. We're going strong, guys. We're going strong. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!